Today on the Continuum, we're going to be looking at the murder that triggered Kristallnacht. This is the Continuum. By 1938, Germany was no longer a democracy. Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party had transformed the nation into a dictatorship rooted in racial hatred. Jews, once neighbors and colleagues, were declared outsiders, stripped of protections, stripped of rights. The Nuremberg Laws of 1935 announced Jews are forbidden to marry or have relations with German citizens of German and related blood. Another clause stated Jews are no longer citizens of the Reich. This is more than discrimination. This was the systematic erasure of Jewish existence in public life. By 1938, signs hung in window shops. Jews not wanted here. Children were taunted in school. Businesses were confiscated. Professionals lost their job. Historian Saul Friederlin later observed, step by step, Jews were punished out of the nation's life, socially, economically, and legally. And yet, escaping was nearly impossible. The world beyond Germany looked away. Immigration quotas were strict. Few countries opened their doors. A report from the U.S. State Department admitted in 1938 the numbers of Jews seeking entry far exceeds the quota permitted under law, and so families clung to survival, while a dark future closed in. In Paris, one teenager, Herschel Greisepan, writes letters to his parents trapped in Germany, letters filled with fear. Letters that would change the course of his life and unleash one of the most infamous nights in modern history. October 1938. The Nazi state carried out what had become known as Polonnection, the expulsion of Polish Jews living in Germany. Gestapo officers went door to door. Families were given only minutes to pack. Police reports later record the Jews were forced to leave their homes immediately. They were transported by train to the Polish border. Among those expelled were the Geisepens, Herschel's parents, his brother, his sister. They were herded onto trains and dumped at the border between Germany and Poland. But Poland did not want them. Guards blocked their entry. Germany would not take them back. A Polish border official described the scene. Thousands of people stood in fields, in the cold, without shelter. They had no food, no money. They were abandoned in the mud. And from that desolated strip of land, Herschel's sister sent him a letter in Paris. It read, "They threw us out. We are at the border. We have nothing, no food, no home. We do not know what will happen to us." 17-year-old Herschel, safe in Paris, read his sister's words. He carried them with him, each sentence a wound. And soon, grief would turn into resolve. On the morning of November 7th, 1938, Herschel Geisepan walked through Paris with a revolver hidden in his coat. Later, he would explain in police custody, "I had to protest so that the whole world would hear. I could not do nothing while my family suffered." Herschel entered the German embassy on Rue des Lilles. He asked to see an official. He was taken to the office of Ernst von Rath, a 29-year-old diplomat. Minutes later, gunshots rang out. Von Rath collapsed, mortally wounded. Geisepan did not flee. He was arrested at once. Police records record him, quote, saying, "Being a Jew is not a crime. I shot the man in protest of the persecution of my people." For Geisepan, the act was personal, desperate, a cry for attention. But for the Nazis, it was an opportunity. For 2 days, Ernst von Rath lay in critical condition. German newspapers reported hourly bulletins on his health. On November 9, 1938, he died. Propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels seized the moment. In his diary, he wrote, "The Führer has decided demonstrations should not be prepared or organized by the party, but insofar as they erupt spontaneously, they are not to be hampered." That night, Nazi officials gathered in Munich to commemorate the anniversary of Hitler's failed beer hall putsch. When news of von Rast's death arrived, the decision was made. Historian Richard Evans summarized, "The assassination was exploited by the Nazi leadership to unleash a wave of violence against Jews across the Reich." 1938 Germany. Across Germany and Austria, terror swept the streets. Synagogues burned, windows shattered, Jewish homes and shops were looted. A British reporter in Berlin wrote, "The synagogue was a blazed ruin. Firemen stood idle, ordered only to prevent the flames from spreading to Aryan buildings." Over 2 nights, at least 267 synagogues were destroyed. More than 7,000 businesses were smashed and looted. Jewish cemeteries were desecrated. Schools were attacked. The official Nazi press called it the people's righteous anger, but witnesses described mobs organized by SA, SS, and Hitler Youth. 91 Jews were killed. 30,000 Jewish men were arrested and deported to concentration camps: Dachau, Buchenwald, Schwarzenheim. For many, Kristallnacht marked the end of the illusion. The violence made clear. The Nazi regime's goal was not humiliation alone, it was destruction. On November 11th, the New York Times reported a wave of destruction, looting, and burning directed against Jews swept Germany today with the fury of a cyclone. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain called it barbaric. President Franklin Roosevelt called the U.S. ambassador from Berlin. But outrage did not become action. Immigration quotas stayed unchanged. Refugees' pleas were unanswered. Historian Deborah Lipson noted, "The world condemned the program, but did not open its doors to the victims. Condemnation cost nothing. Rescue carried a price few were willing to pay." For German Jews, escape became almost impossible. The violence was only a prelude. Meanwhile, Herschel Geiselpan sat in a Paris prison. The Nazis demanded his extradition. French authorities refused. But after Germany invaded France in 1940, Geiselpan was captured and handed to the Gestapo. Joseph Goebbels planned a show trial. In propaganda notes, he wrote, "We shall prove that international Jewry stands behind this assassination." But the trial never took place. Geiselpan disappeared into the Nazi prison system. Some records suggest he was sent to Streichenau or Magdeburg. His fate remained unknown. Historian Hans-Jürgen Doscher summarized, "Herschel Geiselpan became a ghost, lost to the machinery of the Reich." Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass, is remembered as a turning point when Nazi anti-Semitism turned into organized violence on a massive scale. The destruction of synagogues, the shattering of shop windows, the arrest of 30,000 men, all point towards the horror to come. The Jewish philosopher Hannah Arendt later wrote, "Kristallnacht was the watershed." It made plain that the Nazis' aim was not only to deprive Jews of rights, but to remove them altogether from the world of the living. Herschel Geiselpan never intended to unleash genocide. He wanted the world to see his family suffering. But the Nazis twisted his action into justification of terror. The lesson of Kristallnacht endures. Unchecked hate becomes violence. Violence, left unchallenged, becomes catastrophe. The broken glass of 1938 was only the beginning. Remembering isn't enough. We must recognize that it is a warning. One that speaks urgently today as it did back then. Today, we see that hate goes unchecked in the United States and across the world. The idea of tolerance has taken over and has created a monster, the tolerance paradox. But hate always leads to violence. There is no way out of hate unless there is violence. So, we may have forgotten the story behind Kristallnacht and of Herschel Geisepan, but we can still change things now. Remembering isn't enough. We must take action. Action to understand that violence is a product of hate, and only hate can bring violence. So, understand that all the hate that people spread can only end one way. So either stop spreading hate or remove yourself from areas where hate is spread. Thank you. This has been the Continuum.